All right. I'm the author of AMULET. It's a graphic novel series. Eight books in. I'm working on the ninth one right now. This is my family. I had this in here because I was actually giving a presentation to my kids' school not long ago, and those kids are always asking me about when Amulet 9 is coming out and stuff. And so I also wanted to share photos of the kids too, because they're a big part of my life. It's my wife Amy. She's got a series where the title hasn't been released yet, but she's got a series for Scholastic that'll be out in a couple of years as well. All right, so we're 8 books into Amulet. I've also done an anthology series called Flight. Did this for 8 volumes. This is a series of short stories that a lot of my friends wrote and drew. I did stories myself, and I also painted the covers. I was the art director, and this was a fun project. Sadly it's out of print. I think we did too many too quickly. We did 8 books in about 4 or 5 years. And this was produced over at Image Comics and Random House. So you might still be able to find these in bookstores. If you do, you pick them up quick because they're not going to be on shelves for long. I also did an anthology called Explorer, which is a lot like Flight. It's just a shorter version of it, and this is a bunch of short stories as well. These short story anthologies were essentially arenas for us to practice our storytelling for us comic artists, and in these pages you'll find a lot of well-known comic artists like Randa Telgemeier. She did stories in a couple of these. Amy did a story. Actually, I don't know if she did a story in Explorer. I think it was only Flight. But my assistant Jason Cafoe, who's my colorist, he also writes and draws himself, and he has some of the best ones in these particular anthologies. So these are still in print. You could still get these at bookstores. I highly recommend them if you like Amulet. I also did a comic book series called Daisy Cutter. It's 4 issues, compiled as a graphic novel. It was very highly acclaimed. It was the thing that I suppose in some sense it kickstarted my career because people found out about this and was wondering, who is this guy? How come we never heard of him before? And the reason why is because I was working in another industry. I was not working as a comic artist at the time. I was working in animation. And so I did these. People seemed to like it, and then that led to doing Amulet. Well, while I was doing that, I also did a web comic called Copper, and these are comics that you can find for free on my website. So you can go to boltcityproductions.com, or just as you see down there, it says boltcity.com. You can just plug in boltcity.com. It'll take you to boltcityproductions.com, and there you can find Copper and all of Daisy Cutter. You can find online as well. So these are single page comics that were essentially experiments for me to just tried new things. I didn't know how to color when I started this, so I just used really simple coloring techniques to see how much I can do with those, and that's really how I learned to color my comics. I also did the covers for Harry Potter, the Harry Potter 15th anniversary edition paperbacks. So if you've seen these particular illustrations, these were done by me, and I did this on a computer like the one we're looking at right now. These are all digitally painted. And when I was younger, I actually didn't train traditionally as a painter. I actually don't know my way around a paintbrush very well. I'm not very well versed with oils and gouache and acrylic. I'm mostly just a pencil and pen and ink illustrator. But I've been doing digital illustration for a long time. So this was just a ton of fun for me to do and see where my skill sets were, because I often don't get to color things that much because I have an assistant that's a colorist on Amulet. So for this, I got to do everything, and it was a blast. So while I'm Japanese American, I've been although I was born in Tokyo, my family's been in the States since the 1800s, and my great grandpa actually opened the oldest Japanese grocery store in the United States. So if you wanted to visit a piece of history, you can go to New York City, Manhattan. On Lexington Avenue, you can find the Katagiri store, it's still there, and you can get sushi, ramen. You can get Japanese groceries, a lot of little snacks and things. And you'll find pictures of my grandpa and his brother. I think neither of those guys are my family. I think those are his employees. um, but you'll find pictures of my family up on the walls there, and it's pretty neat. Okay, so here's me when I was younger. I was a skater, surfer, baseball player. I loved sports. I loved being outside. Just pretty easygoing kid. I I wasn't like a super good student. I was just a kid that everyone knew could draw really well. So I was often just in the back corner of the classroom drawing my cartoons and trying to make everybody laugh and have a good time. All right, and I also had a paper route. This is my first job. It's my little brother. So we delivered papers in our first job. We had a great time doing that. So that's my brother and me, the little ones, and older. We're on the bottom right. That's my brother and my mom and me at my wedding. And in the top right corner, you see my grandpa and my grandma with my mom. And that table is actually where I started drawing comics. I started drawing right there, waiting for my mom to get off of work. She was working for my grandma at her restaurant, and I spent just tons and tons of hours right there learning how to do comic books for the first time. I read a lot of my own, read a lot of comics too that were inspiring me. Books like Garfield and Mad Magazine. All right. So this is my mom, my grandma, my brother, and me. Not too long ago. It's about a couple years ago. And yeah, I like to include my family into a lot of the photos that I show because they're such a big part of what I do. I feel like with Amulet, it might be a little different than a lot of other comic books because um, uh, so much of it is inspired by my experiences with my family. So it's not just about me. It's about multiple generations, about kids and grandparents and kind of everybody working together. And I think that's probably unique. This is something that's unique about Amulet is that it has like the mom going on the journey, got the old folks on the journey too, and everybody's just working together. And I just wanted to see an adventure like that. All right, so here are three books that I read when I was in high school that really inspired me to start writing. I didn't think I was a writer until I was in high school. I consider myself an illustrator, and I thought that being an illustrator and being a writer are two separate things. I didn't think that they combined and really kind of fused, and I didn't know if I really had the skills to do it. Now, one of my English teachers in high school assigned us an essay project where we had to write in the style of this author John Steinbeck, who wrote Cannery Row. We read Cannery Row. I thought it was amazing, and I wanted to write something like it. So I wrote a two-page essay in the style. No, it's several pages actually, probably about five or maybe more like close to 10 pages actually. And I wrote an essay about going to the beach, and my teacher gave it back to me and wrote A plus 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 on it, and she doesn't give good grades, right? So I was a little surprised, and she had a little note that said see me after class, so I did. And she grabbed me by the shoulders and she said, you could do this. And I was like, what does that mean? What do you mean? She's like, you could do this. And she said, you could be a professional writer. And I was shocked because up to that point, I thought I was just a dumb kid who liked to hang out at the Pizza Hut and play Street Fighter all the time during my lunchtime at school. I was really good at video games, but not much else. And so I didn't think of myself as somebody who could become the next John Steinbeck. And this teacher said that I could be. That she was very serious about it, and she never talked to me before this. And so that's why I knew what she was saying was important. And so I thought to myself, okay, I can't let her down. And I started working on my writing skills, and I wrote story after story after story. Beginning in high school, I started writing. So what I would do is I would have my school day. I would go home, ride my bikes with my friends or go play baseball, basketball, whatever it was. I'd come home and I would do my homework, and then after homework, I started working on my stories, and I started writing stories that I would print out and bring to school the next day. Now, this is before even like I don't think I had Microsoft Word yet. I never even used this. This is a long time ago. It's in the 90s. And so I used a program called AmiPro, I think. And and before that, I was actually I started by using a typewriter. So I was writing stories on a typewriter. And so then I would bring the stories to school and share it with my friends, and they would read it and tell me what they thought. And that was my first instance of becoming a writer. And I feel like all I've done is really just continue to do exactly that for the rest of my life. Okay. And so most people thought I was going to go to art school because I drew so much, right? So they thought, oh, Kazu, he's going to go to art school. He's going to be an artist, and that's going to be his path. And so everyone was surprised when I said I quit drawing at this time. I decided to quit drawing in high school. I got offered work as a comic book artist from a major studio when I was a junior in high school. And I looked at the comic books that they were making, and I didn't want to draw any of them. I looked at them and I read them, and I just thought, these aren't even superhero comics. These are just a lot of muscles and lots of guns. And I wasn't interested in drawing that. So I decided I wanted to do fun, adventurous cartoons, and I just didn't see much of that out there. So I decided to go to college instead. And I went to film school at UC Santa Barbara and decided to study making films. And while I was there, I actually got a job at the newspaper where they required somebody to draw cartoons for about 5 to 25 to $50 per cartoon. And I decided, oh, this is a great way for me to buy burritos and feed myself through college. And so I ate a lot of burritos, by the way, in Santa Barbara. They're so good. If you're ever in Santa Barbara, make sure to go get a burrito. All right. And so I drew cartoons like this. And so these are my college cartoons. I did tons and tons and tons of cartoons like this. And as you can see, I had an aptitude for this. I was already at a professional level in high school. For about the time I was 14, 15 years old, I was already getting published. And that's why people were shocked when I said I would quit. But I really didn't quit. What I decided to do was just try to find some way to do the kind of cartoons I wanted to see as a reader. And I didn't see anybody doing it. So this would lead me to making books like Amulet. All right. So I just did tons and tons of cartoons like this. This was so much fun. This job, I had such a blast. Every night I would just come into the office and they would give me an assignment. I would just draw like the most fun thing I could think of based on the assignment. And it turned it in at the end of the night. I'm hanging out with some of my best friends, drawing cartoons every single night. It was so great. And it was a daily paper at a college. So that meant I basically worked from Sunday to Thursday, and I would have Fridays off because there would be no paper on Saturday. So yeah, and so this is another illustration. This is an illustration I did for the film journal at the film studies department, and I showed this to a lot of people because this is one that I had to draw um, twice. I actually finished this drawing once, and I spilled a bunch of ink on it and destroyed it, and I was so mad, so upset at myself, and you know, the project was due the next day, and I was upset because I really hated drawing it. I thought the drawing didn't come out well, the one that I had ruined. I didn't like it, and I hated drawing it. Now, after I had to go back and do it again, I actually enjoyed it the second time, and it turned out a little bit better than the first time. And so I realized that, oh, I need to take every opportunity to redraw my drawings. And so later on, when I do books like Amulet, I I realized I think back on stuff like this and I think, oh, I'll make this book better if I just keep redrawing it. So with Amulet, I actually redraw it many, many, many times. The book's drawn about 8 to 10 times over and over and over again until I get the product that I want. So one of the things that you're going to have to do if you want to do comics, you're going to have to be prepared to draw a lot. All right. And so here's a comic strip I did called Clive and Cabbage. I used to just make fun of a lot of movies. These are my characters right there at the bottom right, Rabbit and the Cabbage. That's they're hanging out in Star Wars, and some Jawas are trying to sell them some speakers. And I used to have fun making fun of movies that I like. And I found out that if I made fun of a movie I didn't like, then it didn't turn out very funny. So one thing that I realized after a while is that when you the best cartoons, the best parodies, and the best um, the best instances of people making fun of something come about when those people actually like the thing they're making fun of. And I didn't recognize that early on. So, people don't like mean spiritedness, but they love it when people celebrate something else by making fun of it. So my brother does this to me all the time. My little brother just makes fun of me all the time, and I think it's because he loves me. All right. So, what inspired Amulet? I read Bone by Jeff Smith. I don't know if you guys have read Bone. I read this when I was a kid, and it was colored and reprinted when I was an adult, and it really did pave the way for books like Amulet. Allowed me to have a place for me to do it. When I saw what Jeff was doing, I knew I wanted to do something like it. I read Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, and I read this in college, and I realized that the cartoons that I did that I used to get grounded for or put into detention. I used to get into put in detention by my teachers for drawing cartoons. I even had like one science teacher. I still remember Mr. Nakawi always telling me like, why you gotta do, why can't you just, you know, get it together? And by get it together, he meant stop drawing cartoons and be a scientist because I was a good student, or he thought I could be a good student. He didn't realize that I was actually not that good a student, and I didn't have any good answers for it. Now I read this book and I realized I found my answer. And I've found that comics could be something really, really vitally important to our society. And so I started becoming kind of obsessed with the idea of making comics for good in the sense that they would be something that people could use, and not just be entertained by. And then I read this book, Nausicaa: The Valley of the Wind by Hayao Miyazaki, and I was so blown away. This totally, you know, got me emotionally. I felt that it was this was it. I had to do something like this. After I was done reading this, I knew for sure that at some point I would have to make a Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind type of book. And I didn't know if it could be a job. It didn't look like it could be a job. I didn't know how that would come about, but I knew that I would have to do it. So back then I gave it a try, and this is what amulets looked like when I first started. And so I was in college, and I drew this. So it looked a little bit like Bone, not too much like Nausicaa, and yeah, and this is what I could produce, and it took me forever, and it didn't look like what I wanted it to look like, and so I was really disappointed in myself. Um, it still looks pretty okay. I think you could publish this, but it's not quite what Amulet is today. And so after I did about 30 pages of this, I decided to just put it aside and come back to it when I was more prepared. I really didn't know what to write about, and I also wasn't prepared for how hard graphic novels would be. So I decided to switch my focus to animation so I can get a job, and I started animating and trying to teach myself how to animate. And so here's a couple of tests for this animated film I was doing called Bolt City. And I never got to complete it because one night I came home from my work at the newspaper. I was going to do my nightly shift working on this animated film, and someone had broken into my apartment and stolen my computer, all my hard drives, and pretty much my entire film. And it was about a year and a half of animation, and this is all I had left was just these little video test files. I don't have the rest of the film. But I was pretty far from completion. I'd say I wasn't even halfway yet, and it was the project looked like it was going to take another year or 2 years, and I wasn't sure it was worth it. So at that point, when this happened, I decided this is my apartment when I was working on it. So I had the storyboards up on the walls. I was just sitting there animating on the floor there on that little coffee table, and I decided it wasn't worth having to go back and redo this whole thing. And so uh, what happened was I needed to get a job right out of school so I could support my parents. I was paying for my way through college myself, and then I would have to help my parents financially. And I knew that this was coming. And so I decided to just quit art altogether and start working in corporate graphic design. And so from there, I started working in graphic design right out of school for a couple of years. and I ended up at Altoona Parter Architects in downtown Los Angeles. And I was there. I started as just somebody who was getting photocopies for people, and they saw that I could be a graphic designer, so they hired me to do their graphic design work. And so I started working on a lot of major building projects, like and pitching and selling these things for people. But it didn't feel like it was an amazing job. I was getting paid really well, and it felt like a dream job, but it just wasn't the right fit for me because I knew I could draw cartoons and I could write cartoons, and these books would never get made if I stayed in this tower and started and kept working. And so I decided I got to quit. But the day that I really decided I have to get out of this was on 9/11, September 11th, 2001. The terrorist attacks happened, and everybody was going was just like in a tizzy. Like at work, they were just so stressed out, and people seemed to come to me to try to calm down for some reason, even though I was the youngest in the office. And I remember thinking at the time, like, I'm only the lowly graphic designer here. And if people had to rely on me in times of great stress over anything, what would it be that I would feel comfortable with them coming to me about? And I decided that, as silly as it may sound, it was comics. That I was really, really destined, I think, to draw cartoons in this world, and that was like the thing I do best. So I felt like if this type of thing ever happened again, I hope that I'm drawing comics doing it. Now that you know, you don't get a job drawing comics anywhere pretty much. So I was trying to find places to put comics, and so I put them on my website. Oh, somebody's got drawing capabilities. That's okay. You can draw on there if you want. I think Jen can stop that. But I was drawing these drawing comics on my website, and people found it, and I was using this as a way to just practice my cartooning, my coloring, my writing. And when Scott McCloud reached out to me, a whole lot of artists who I admired and respected, they came to me with their emails, and they asked me who I was and where I came from and what I was doing and why am I not published. And so soon enough, I was published again as a comic artist, but I was doing this once a month just for myself. And and during that time, I was actually working as a creative director in an animation studio. So I used to direct commercials and game cinematics like this. So I was building things in 3D and just doing 3D animation stuff. And I was also developing a movie at Walt Disney Feature Animation, where I was writing and directing for Disney. That was actually the last job I had. Last job I had before I started working on comics full time was writing and directing a feature film called Let's Get Francis that I wrote and was directing over at Walt Disney Feature Animation. It never got made, and it looked like it wasn't going to happen. So I actually just walked away from this and gave it away to my friends and said I'm going to go work on AMULET instead. And so when I started working on AMULET, I moved into this tiny little apartment, tried to lower my costs as much as possible because I knew what a big risk I was taking. And I decided to start drawing comics in this little place. And this is the entire apartment. So this is the whole thing. You're not seeing much of anything else. It's a single studio apartment. So it's one room. There's a little bathroom in the back there and behind that door. And there's a kitchen, which is where the AC unit was. And in LA, you had to have an AC unit. Um, and so I would draw in the kitchen on the really hot days. Okay. And that's where I drew Daisy Cutter. After Daisy Cutter, people came to me and said, "Wow, what are you going to do next? What you're doing looks really good." So I had a lot of interest in my next project, and I knew that next project would be AMULET. So I pitched this to Scholastic, and they liked it. After they saw this first, all I did was send them 6 pages. They had everything I'd done prior to this, which was Copper, the webcomic, Flight, the anthology, and Daisy Cutter, my first graphic novel. And they looked at all that. They saw this and said, "Yep, we'd like to do this." And at that point, that was the first time I got paid full time to do comics. So they gave me a big advance, and it was for 2 books, and I was on my way. And this is around the time we were working on book 5 or 6. I was able to, like, the books, when it actually came out, Amulet 1 didn't do very well when it showed up on the shelf. It wasn't super well regarded. I heard a lot of people call it a disappointment, considering everything else I had done prior to my other works. And I still remember the conversation I had with my agent, where when we saw the early sales of Amulet, and her reaction was, "This is no good. This is bad. This is really, really, really bad." I was like, "How bad is it, Judy?" And I told her at the time, I said, no matter how bad this is still this is what I've decided to do anyway. So, I mean, I'm just going to continue regardless of what the results are. I'm just going to keep moving forward, and I'm just going to have to believe in it. And so it's not going to phase me one way or another. And I was, at the time, I was turning down TV show offers. I turned down movie projects to direct. I was getting a lot of opportunities, and everyone seemed to be shocked. A lot of my friends were shocked that I would choose to do comics where they clearly weren't making me any money. I was just doing it because I felt like there was a vision for it and I had to finish it. So I just continued on, and it progressively did better and better and better. And now it sells in the millions of copies. So I mean, it's just, you never know. These are one of those stories, I think, where you kind of just have to stay with something, because you never know how long it might take. It might take a longer than you expect. So this is Amulet. This is the trailer, but I think I'm not going to go to that right now because it'll take up too much time. You guys can take a look at the trailer on my website at boltcityproductions.com if you want to see the book trailer, if you haven't seen it already. This is how I make a book. So I'll send this to my editor, like a one-page synopsis of a book. This changes completely throughout the production of a book, but it gives everybody else an idea of what I'm doing. And so when I write my scenes, I write like this. I draw the scenes. I draw like what the scene might look like, what the characters would say, and I would just sort of play act with like this. And I don't think too much about the way it looks on a page. I just want to get the story down. So I do a lot of this. So you see bits and pieces of the story, sometimes some panel work right there to the right. All those panels to the right, they got taken out, so they're not in the book. And then I would go in and once I figured out what the scene would feel like, I would start thumbnailing the pages, and it looks like this. So I do my rough drafts like this, and I'll do it again and again and again and again until I feel like somewhere in all the drafts that I have completed, I feel like I've rehearsed these scenes enough that I feel like I got a pretty good grasp of what's supposed to happen. And so I'll thumbnail it again with this idea, like with a clarity of vision for the scene. And then once I have that, I'll start penciling the scene, and I pencil it like this, scanned into the computer and print it out larger. I go in and ink it using a graphite pencil. I actually don't use ink for anything but the letter, like the big lettering, like the VWAM and the foosh. That's done with a pen, but everything else on there is done with pencil, except for the text down there that says "This bubble won't hold the fire back for long." That's actually a font that's designed based on my handwriting. Then we have the pages flatted by we usually hire freelance flatters to come in and just do some basic coloring work that looks like this. And what this does is it allows us to choose all these little spots like the fire or the face or things like that, isolate them so we can paint and allow, and then you can make it look like this. And so this is what my friend and assistant Jason Kufo will do. He'll come in and paint the pages to look like this. So this is what it looks like when everything comes together. This page is from Amulet. And I would show you stuff from number 9, but I can't. And book 9's looking really good, I think. I'm pulling out all the stops. I'll say that. I think that this book, even though it won't be necessarily bigger than the other ones, it'll feel bigger, I think, by a lot. And I'm betting that it'll work, but we'll see. I guess we'll only know once it's done. So here's another picture I show a lot of students. Drawing up at the top is something I did when I was, I think, 8 years old, and the one at the bottom I did in 2005 or something like that, or 2015, 2010. I forgot. Around, not that long ago, probably about, I'd say 7 years ago, probably. Um, but I was a much older person. Okay, I did the one at the bottom, and what I decided to do is my mom had texted me the photo at the top and said, "Hey, look at this great drawing you did when you were a kid." And I was like, "Hey, that's actually not that bad." So what I decided to do was for Mother's Day, I decided to just paint over it to see what it looks like if I paint with the skills that I have now, um, and see what I had in mind when I was a kid, and that's the drawing that comes out. Now, mind you, the drawing at the top was done in 1980, I'd say 85 or six. So now this gives, I think, parents a good, and teachers and other kids, I think, a really good depiction of the frustration that a kid feels when they're trying to draw something and they're getting mad at the drawing because it doesn't fulfill the vision they have in their mind. They don't have the skills, they're just kids. And this is me as a kid at the top. When I was showing this to everybody, I remember going, man, this is so cool. And then they'll look at it and go, "Oh, that's so cute. Oh, it's like, oh, look at the wobbly wheels and stuff." I'm like, "No, it's awesome. You guys don't see how awesome it is. And someday you'll know." And so when years later, when my mom sent me that picture, I just thought, "Oh, I'll see what it looks like if I just do like a 30-minute drawing with my skills that I have now. See what it looks like if I took the exact drawing at the top and painted it, and that's what it looks like at the bottom." So that's what I had in mind to show people, but they thought, it was just the cute drawing that I was doing at the top. So when you see kids, just remember, or for all the kids out there, remember, it's all about just sticking with this stuff. If you want to be good at it, you have to keep practicing. And here's another good example. I did the Flight Volume 1 cover back when I didn't know how to paint anything. And so I did this illustration, and the underpainting underneath the drawing there, that was done by a friend of mine because I didn't know how to do anything in Photoshop yet. And so years later, when I was asked to redraw the cover, I had all of the skills. So I just thought, well, let me see what happens if I do it now. And so I repainted it, and this is what resulted. So, just take some time. Even when you're an adult, there's things you don't yet know you can start learning. Like right now, I'm starting to learn how to play the guitar, and I think it's fun being bad at something. I think if you enjoy something that you're bad at, I think it's a real gift, because then you have this long journey towards getting good at it, and I think that can be really enjoyable. Okay.